Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. First up, ladies and gentlemen, GST revenue for March saw the second highest collection ever at 1.78 lakh crore, seeing 11.5% year-on-year growth. This surge was driven by a significant rise in GST collection from domestic transactions at 17.6%. Also in a first, the yearly transactions through UPI or the Unified Payment Interface crossed 100 billion in the financial year. The UPI posted a record 57% rise in volume compared to the previous financial year, and there's been a deeper entrenchment of UPI with increased use of the platform for even small ticket items. Meanwhile, Maruti Suzuki, Tata Motors, Mahindra & Mahindra have all reported higher car sales in the month of March, wrapping up the fiscal 2024 at record levels. The numbers are seen as a key indicator of private consumption in Bharat. Wholesale sales of passenger vehicles reached an all-time high, totaling more than 42 lakh units. In a major anti-insurgency operation, 9 Naxalites were killed in an encounter with security personnel in the Bijapur district of Chhattisgarh. Bijapur district also comes under the Bastar Lok Sabha constituency that will go to polls in the first phase of the general elections on the 19th of April. Let's set up debate number 1, ladies and gentlemen. Expansionist, belligerent and a provocateur. Those words can best describe the PLA-CCP-led Chinese regime and the policies it has been adopting in the rise. The rise of Bharat in the global sphere, pushing Beijing into a corner, clearly has had an effect on the decisions it also sometimes makes. Last month, following a visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the state to inaugurate infrastructure projects, that is Arunachal Pradesh, China has said that it was opposed to his activities in that region. Bharat termed the arguments baseless and questioned China's locus standi on such matters also. The US also weighed in on the matter, saying it recognized Arunachal Pradesh as an integral territory of Bharat and strongly opposed any unilateral attempts to make claims on it by military or civilian incursion or encroachments. But Beijing just doesn't seem to care or learn. In yet another bid to assert its claim on Arunachal Pradesh, China has released a fourth list of 30 new names of various places along the line of actual control. They are trying to rename. China is claiming it has made those changes in accordance with the relevant regulations on place name management of the State Council. The new list of places renamed by China includes 11 residential areas, 12 mountains, 4 rivers, 1 lake, 1 mountain pass and a piece of land. The names have Chinese characters, Tibetan Pinyin, the Roman alphabet version of Mandarin Chinese. The ministry also included detailed latitude and longitude and a high resolution map. Now, this is the fourth time the CCP-led Chinese government and the authorities have actually unilaterally renamed places in Bharat's sovereign territory, that is Arunachal Pradesh. Beijing released the first list of the so-called standardized names of 6 places in Arunachal in 2017. This was done after the Dalai Lama's visit to Arunachal Pradesh. The second list of 15 places were released in 2021. South Tibet was marked on the new standardized maps. Then in 2023, 11 places, including a town near Arunachal's capital Itanagar, was named by China in their own new map. And now Beijing has renamed 30 places in this year as part of their concerted propaganda. Bharat has outrightly rejected China's renaming of these 30 places. The move has been completely senseless, has been deemed completely senseless, and Delhi has been very firm in its stance. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar leading the charge against China when he scoffed at these attempts, and he asked if naming someone's house as yours would actually make it yours. He asserted that Arunachal Pradesh belongs to Bharat and renaming it does not change anything. Then Union Minister Kiran Rijiju, an MP from the state, said China was used to meek Indian government in the past and this government's strong border policy has irritated the nation. He said baseless claims by Beijing weren't going to change historical facts that prove that Arunachal is an inalienable part of Bharat. The Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, Pema Khandu, dismissed this as a gimmick by China, reaffirming that citizens and patriots of the state will reject such antics. Former Foreign Secretary Harsh Singla reiterated that the state will always be a part of Bharat. And we're looking forward to Dr. Harsh Singla joining us later in this broadcast here on The Right Stand. But first up, Bharat is not the only nation where China has tried its cartographical misadventures. Nepal is upset with China's new map because it does not include several areas that Nepal claims as its own sovereign territory. China has not laid any claims on Nepal's territory, but instead it doesn't recognize areas which are incorporated by Nepal into the official Nepali map in May 2020. China has staked claim over 764 kilometers of Bhutan. Since 2020, the Chinese have also raised an additional claim in eastern Bhutan. The Philippines has rejected China's map because of its inclusion of a dashed line around the contested areas of the South China Sea that was subject to an international tribunal ruling in 2016 that found in favor of Manila. Vietnam has protested against China's claims over the Paracel and Spratly Islands. The island nation has maintained that it violates its sovereignty and jurisdiction over its waters. Taiwan has rejected the 9-dash line and Beijing's South China Sea claims. Taiwan Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said that Taiwan was absolutely not a part of the People's Republic of China. Indonesia too has raised the banner of revolt. The Natuna Islet cluster, located within the country's 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, is claimed by China within its 10-dash line over the South China Sea. All of these nations are upset with China's cartographical misadventures. Why is this cartographic aggression being undertaken by the PLA regularly on a regular basis? What good comes of it? And is there something that we can do as a nation? Is there something that we can also take a step in a direction to talk to the Chinese in the same language that they understand? Ashok Sajjanar, former diplomat with us, Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow of the ORF with us, Dr. Roger Liu, Associate Professor, Flame University with us, and Andrew K. Leung, China Strategist with us. Namaste to everybody. Thank you very much. Roger Liu, let me first ask you, sir, how would you see this cartographic adventurism, Dr. Liu? Is there a thought process behind this?
Well, I think China has been prepared this for a long time. Because before you are taking some invasive strategy or tactics, you will have to justify it. You will have to persuade the people from the inside of China that actually you own this place. So renaming of different places is actually the best way, because this is a way to legitimize your ownership of these places. So I think China has been prepared to take more actions towards this, because as we have been warned, China has been flexing its military missiles in different parts of the continent. So they're aiming at Japan, they're aiming at Taiwan, and they're aiming at India as well. So, if you remember recently, Zhang Mearsheimer has visited India, and he has raised a warning that if China really wants to attack Taiwan, China will also try to take back some part of its claimed territory as well. So actually, China has a long plan of conquering different places. After conquering Taiwan, it will move on to India, and then to the Russian border, and then to the Senkaku Islands, and then other places as it grows stronger. So I think it's very important for the Quad allies to understand China's ambition and try to curb it before it happens further. So that's very important. This is something that we have to notice.
So it's not just a cartographic misadventure. There is a deeper game to it. You continue to release maps, continue to claim territory, and eventually move into that territory saying it was always part of ours because this is what the map said. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, what should Bharat do?
Well, thank you very much, Anand, for having me on your show. I think this is, in my view, what China is doing. It's a very sinister design. And it's a well thought out process that if it is a well-known saying that if you keep on repeating a falsehood, keep on repeating a lie, then after some time people start believing in it, thinking that it is true, that it is correct. And this is what China seems to be doing by repeating its claim over and over again and saying, that this is what we have always it has always belonged to us, and that's what they're talking about Arunachal Pradesh. This is something similar to the 9-line that they have put in the South China Sea. But your question, Anand, I think it's a very valid one. What should India do, and what should the other countries also do? I think we have seen what Philippines has done. Of course, when the Permanent Court of Arbitration award was given in July 2016, then the leadership being what it was, they decided to do nothing. But now they have woken up to it and they are pushing back against China. So I think as far as India is concerned, definitely India has a large number of options, possibilities. And I would say that the first of them would be in terms of strengthening its ties and broadening, deepening its relations with Taiwan. You see, it is a win-win situation as far as both India and Taiwan are concerned. India has not been doing it. It has not been going, so to say, full throttle in that direction, because it has been mindful and it has been sensitive to what Chinese concerns are, what Chinese concerns would be. And we do not wish to be provocative. But I think we have seen over the last many years, Anand, whether it is as far as, supporting Pakistan in the area of terrorism, putting these technical holds, vetoes on designation of terrorists, which have been carrying out terrorist attacks against India, or it is standing in the way of India's membership of the NSG, or standing in the way of India's membership, permanent membership of the UN Security Council, etc. And now, of course, as you mentioned very clearly here, that this is the fourth time that it is, China.
See, Ambassador Sajanar, there is something that I'd like to ask you. Here's what we have done on news18.com, and I'd just like to see if we can call that map out here right behind me. If China is going to rename places, let us then very clearly, cartographically expose China for its own territorial claims. Can we have slug number 24 back on air, please? Yes. Yeah. And quickly, let's try and look at this map, ladies and gentlemen. Here, these are the regions. This is actually the size of China, the actual size of China. It's quite shrunk. Most of this is all occupied territory or claimed territory. This is the new territory. Xinjiang itself means the new territory. So why not highlight Xinjiang separately? And this dispute is over the entire surrender to China, or the so-called surrender to China. The next area that comes out is Tibet. This is supposed to be claimed as autonomous region. Chinese autonomous region CAT, or Chinese occupied territory COT. Why should we say it? We should very clearly just call this Tibet, and all of the Tibet, Upper Tibet, Middle Tibet and Lower Tibet should be highlighted separately and called out separately. And the third is the Inner Mongolia region. The entire Inner Mongolia region, China has taken claim and declared an autonomous region of China. Let's call it Inner Mongolia, because it is Inner Mongolia. There has been a demographic claim or cleansing of the Inner Mongolians altogether, and it's been done quietly so. There is a similar act that is happening in East Turkestan or Xinjiang. So why not call this out? Here on news18.com, we have very clearly highlighted these areas separately. Let's try and openly say it, sir. And the other aspect is, this is the first step towards rejecting this entire one China narrative. Ambassador Sajanar, why shouldn't we do it?
No, absolutely. I think we should do it. And, it'll be, to begin with, it'll be, I think, a little difficult for the government to come out and say that in so many words. But I think, like you said very correctly, News 18 has done that. And I think many other, whether it is media houses, TV channels, private TV channels, newspapers, think tanks, academia, etc. Definitely there can be a move that can be built, because you have logic on your side, Anand. I fully agree with you. I fully subscribe to what you say, that these are all recently acquired territories. Whether Xinjiang till 1949, when China became an independent country, the PRC, Xinjiang was under the control of Russia. And before that, it has been under, Turkish rule. It has for very shorter durations, it has been under the Chinese suzerainty. So I think whether it is Inner Mongolia or it is Xinjiang or it is Tibet, I think definitely this is a move that can be taken forward. As I said, it could be started first by private channels, private think tanks, etc. But that is a movement should really be built up. But there are other options also. I was mentioning one about Taiwan, the other is about reaching out in a much more proactive manner to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which China is so anxious and concerned about. And there are other possibilities, and I think we can weigh them even at the level of the government as to what the government also needs to do to push back, because what China is doing is also being done at the level of the government. It's not being done only at the level of the private entities or private institutions. Anand.
Sushant Sareen?
Yeah, look, at one level, you could say that the Chinese are extremely puerile and petulant, in addition to being very belligerent. And frankly, they have this tendency of riling up people. But I agree with what Professor Liu was saying, that, they're trying to establish a claim, and that may be 10, 15, 20, 50 years down the line. They'll say, but we've always claimed that this is our part. So they manufacture their own maps. In fact, Anand, let me relate to you. We'd gone to some place in China, I'm forgetting Hainan or some place. They'd kept an atlas out there on the basis of which they were claiming the entire South China Sea, and were insisting that, this is an ancient map. Now, in that same atlas which they had kept, we saw a map of Kashmir. All of Kashmir was in Indian territory in that same damn atlas.
Yeah.
Right? He said, then why are you in, if one map is right in this atlas and it is like the holy grail for you, then why is the other map not right? They removed the atlas. So, this is the kind of fraud these Chinese play. But I think we should stop calling China China. We should call it East Tibet, or call it Western Japan, or call it Northern Taiwan. Okay, and to say that why do we need to do it at the private level and not at the governmental level, either don't do it at all, or do it at the governmental level. Now, if your government, and this is a part of the problem with our diplomacy, we've always tried to appease the other side, always tried, quote unquote, as Ambassador Sajjanar was saying, we don't want to be provocative. What are the Chinese doing? Are they not being provocative? And we don't want to be provocative. Now, if you don't want to be provocative, you don't want to do certain things, then don't have this debate. Then, just lump it. But otherwise, you have to push back. And I completely agree with you. We should, I think it has become a kind of a tacit Indian government policy that we don't talk about one China anymore. And we should. And we should try and convince as many countries as possible to not talk about one China anymore. But just because we don't talk about one China is not enough. Okay, I agree with what Ambassador Sajjanar is saying. We should have closer ties with Taiwan. Why not? For example, we don't even send ministerial visits to Taiwan. Why? Why not? Other countries can send. What is our problem? So I think there has to be a certain degree of more forceful way of dealing with these Chinese and putting them in their place, because suddenly it's like that poor man who suddenly becomes very rich and it goes to his head. That's what the Chinese are all about. They're very small people, if you look at it. They don't have that vision. They don't have that depth of vision that to say that, okay, fine, we've done well for ourselves and let's take the rest of the world along with us. No, they want to capture everybody. This goddamn middle kingdom complex which they have, who cares about what their middle kingdom is? But what is the originality that the Chinese bring to the table? Please name one original thing that the Chinese have contributed in the last 500 years. One. And these guys are unnecessarily trying to, push everybody in the wrong way. I don't think it's acceptable. It should not be acceptable.
It is not acceptable, Sushant Sareen, but the point is that a former ambassador on our panel, with all respects to him, is actually saying, let's not make it an official position, let's do it privately. Let private institutions start doing it, whereas it's an official statement that is an official map that is coming in from the PLA and the CCP. So they are making everything official about it. In
Anand,
Bharat,
can
we are being a little cagey and we are saying, let's not make it official. Let's just do it in undertones. Let's just do it on news platforms and debates, but let's not make it a diplomatic issue.
Anand,
Ambassador,
that is not correct.
Sir,
Yeah.
no disrespect meant to you, sir, but I'm just saying, how long will we as a nation continue to say, let's not provoke, let's not poke the bear?
Give me a chance. Give me a chance. Yeah. You know what I have said is, Anand, for you and also for Sushant Sareen, that there are many things that the government can do. And in that, strengthening relations and ties with Taiwan is one of those that the government should do. I'm not saying that everything, needs to be done at the private level. My comment about doing at the private level was only with respect to what News 18 has done. Also, as far as reaching out to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, it is the government should do that. So, I think we need to have a very prudent thinking and a very careful thinking as to what do we do, and it makes perfect sense that we should have good relations with Taiwan. We have not been doing it so far, but right now, seeing what China is doing and what China has been doing in other spheres also, there is no cause for us not to be mindful of their sensitivities and do something which will provoke them, because they are doing everything which provokes us. And I mentioned a large number of cases, so there is no cause for us not also to be upfront about it.
No, sir, here is a difference, sir. We may call it Chinese aggression, misadventurism. Andrew K.P. Leung has not yet spoken. Sushant Sareen wants to make an intervention. Then I'll come to you, Mr. Leung. Thank you for your patience. But we have to credit the CCP and the PLA for their relentless pursuit of what they believe they need to get. And they make no bones about it. Why is it that a CCP and a PLA can get away with this kind of adventurism, this kind of browbeating, but other nations are tepid in their response, or how they would? You're strongly defending, but you're not aggressive in your posture to go back and say, listen, this is how you are, this is who you are. You are Xinjiang here, you are Inner Mongolia there, you are Tibet, this is all of Tibet. And I will continue to call this Tibet and not Chinese territory or Chinese autonomous territory. Why should we call it CAT? This is occupied territory. This is Tibet. We recognize our borders with Tibet, not with China. Because China is far away sandwiched in between all these three regions. Yes, Sushant Sareen.
Okay, so I was going to make one point, but let me make two very quick points. One, yes, I agree with you. And I wonder, can't the government of India, when we publish official maps, we can publish a map of the kind you have shown?
Yeah.
We show China and we show Tibet and we show Xinjiang, we show Inner Mongolia, we show Taiwan separately, we show all these places separately. We can do that. Okay, number one. Number two, see, when I say it's been part of the problem has been our diplomacy, we like to imagine, or at least, and this is not directed at Ambassador Sajjanar, but maybe some of his colleagues, it's been our approach that, look, if you be nice to somebody, the other person will also be nice to you. The worst thing you can do in diplomacy is to be nice to someone, because no good deed in diplomacy goes unpunished. So, for example, we are seeing this fracas over this island with Sri Lanka. We gave it away because we wanted to be nice. Little realizing that just 2 years before we gave away this island, the Sri Lankans were actually backing the Pakistanis and giving them overflight rights.
Yes.
Okay. All the Pakistani supplies were going through Sri Lanka when the 1971 war was to take place. Number one. Number two, so we tend to be very expansive, that we will do this, after that everything will be hunky-dory. We will give back Haji Pir Pass to the Pakistanis, which was won with a lot of blood and daring and courage by our generals,
yes,
and young officers actually at that point of time. We signed it off. Why? Because we thought we'll buy peace. This concept of constantly trying to buy peace by trying to appease the other side, I think it's run its course. And it's about time that we stop doing these kind of gestures like an imperial power, like we used to do, because we had an imperial family, behaving like an imperial power. I think it's about time we stop doing this kind of nonsense.
And not just that, till the time we get stronger, we have the kind of economic might and heft that we can sit across the table as an equal and then stare the other person down. We have to learn to defend ourselves aggressively. Andrew K.P. Leung, why would China resort to this kind of map adventurism? Is there a greater strategy towards this? Thank you for your patience, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. First of all, I think that we should pay attention to the United Nations Charter. All these thinker pointing, chest thumping is not going to get us anywhere. So we should abide by the United Nations Charter. The United Nations does not recognize Taiwan as a country, as recognized there is only one China, including Taiwan. So I think that no point arguing about that. The same applies to Tibet and also Xinjiang, which is recognized by the United Nations as part of China. But where the United Nations Charter is not clear in the terms of territorial disputes, as between India and China on a number of fronts, we should really look at what the history behind it. Now, as far as the Arunachal Pradesh is concerned, it all can be traced back to 1913 and 1914, the so-called Mahon Line of British India. Now, the British India, of course, at that time entered into that part of the territory and established arbitrarily the so-called Mahon Line. Of course, subsequently, independent India recognized that, and then later on led to the establishment of this Arunachal Pradesh as part of Indian territory. But that the claim has never been recognized by China all these years. And that's the same applies to the territorial disputes in the so-called line of action, actual control. I mean, there are a lot of disagreement along those lines, and no amount of finger pointing, thumping is not going to solve the problem. Now, as to taking aggressive action, both sides can take aggressive action. It's not going to solve the problem. I think that where there are disputes, both sides should sit calmly and then, of course, try to negotiate if they can, and if no negotiation is possible, agree to disagree. But otherwise, more border conflict is not in the best interest of either India or China, and that's been recognized by the top leaders of both countries. And that's why both top leaders want to scale down the kind of confrontation, not to scale up. Of course, you can make diplomatic gestures, objections, but this is one thing to do that is another taking provocative actions, especially in other areas which are governed by the United Nations Charter. And I rest my case.
What happens with the UN decision in favor of Manila with respect to the Philippines? Has China accepted that?
No, China has never been part of this.
So then why should any other nation respect what the UN Charter says if China does not respect what the UN says?
Oh, well, wait a minute. You're confusing the United Nations Charter with the tribunal. The tribunal is not recognized as has provisions requiring that the litigants that they have to be party to the same kind of proceedings. It's very different from the United Nations Charter itself, recognizing the sovereignty of countries.
Anand, ask him, does China, does the United Nations recognize South China Sea and the 9-dash line, which the Chinese are claiming and are belligerent, do not allow navigation, freedom of navigation?
Well, I'm not saying... Well, I'm not saying...
UN Charter?
Well, what I'm saying that is, of course, the South China Sea, the so-called 9-dash lines, is subject to a lot of disputes. And I think it's right and proper for other governments to state the case. But that line of argument cannot be applied to...
Why can't that line of argument be applied? This is sovereign territory of Bharat and China is laying claim. We should not argue. Sovereign territory of East Turkestan, and it's been forcefully occupied. It's been branded new territory by the Chinese PLA. It's Xinjiang means new territory. That means it's not existing China. Inner Mongolia is not China, it's again forcibly occupied territory. Why shouldn't we highlight that, and why shouldn't we ask those questions? And if China is making incursions into Nepal, nobody should ask questions. China can go wherever, the PLA can go wherever they want. If they decide, oh, tomorrow I like this place, I'll take it. I'll rename this place and I'll take it. But no other nation should do so. Dr. Roger Liu, do you agree with this argument? That two leaders have said we don't want escalation, but PLA will continue to print maps. Two leaders say we don't want escalations, but they will continue to send soldiers into Indian territory in Galwan. and then get their noses punched. Yes, Dr. Rajaliu, final word.
Well, this is how all these mechanisms between the border talks failed. Well, the original idea to have the two leaders to talk together, Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi, is to avoid to bypass all these bureaucratic red tapes and to solve this issue. But the key idea that the key reason that this cannot be solved is that China actually doesn't care about India's sovereignty. So China has been using India as a convenient, target. Whatever happens, it will use as a target for its nationalism. So I think going back to Minister Jaishankar's words, well, China really need to respect seriously India's sovereignty and sovereign claims without playing little tricks like changing the names in Arunachal Pradesh.
It's very humbly, sir. Let's go quickly. Moving on, Dr. Shringla should join us, but here's just one submission as Dr. Shringla joins us, and I thank all our panelists that we should continue